For many people, the holidays aren't just a time of joy and celebration. They're a time when unresolved family dynamics rise to the surface. Old roles, unspoken expectations, and tensions you thought were buried somehow manage to find their way to the table. And if you're honest, it can feel like you're caught in a loop you've outgrown but can't escape. I've been there. I've sat at that table, smiling through the discomfort, playing a role that didn't feel true to me, coping in my own way. For years, I believed I had to, because that's what family was supposed to do, right? I mean, loyalty, sacrifice, and tradition. But I was suffocating under the weight of it all. Even after moving away decades of physical distance, most of my adult life, distance is a mirage, an illusion. Because as soon as you're back in touch with your beloved family, the patterns pick right back up where they left off. That's why I have to introduce sovereignty here. It wasn't until I stepped into my own sovereignty that I could see those patterns for what they were, programming. I broke the cycle, and in doing so, I finally began to understand what family truly is. Not a binding contract, but a mirror. So today, we're going to dive into those dynamics. I want to help you recognize the patterns, not so you can fight against them, no, but so you can rise above them. I'm not here to tell you to cut ties with your family or to reject them. I'm here to remind you that you are an individual, but not just an individual. You are sovereign. So you can engage with your family from a place of authenticity, not obligation, from a place of truth, not guilt, from a place of self love that's not blinded by conditioned, unconditional love. In this series, we're going to explore exactly how you do all of that.
Hi, my name is Zara Green, and I'm glad you're here.
Here's the first thing we need to understand: you chose your family. I know that's not easy to hear, but hear me out. You did not choose them from a place of punishment, but as a part of your soul's journey. Your constructed ego would never, but your sovereign self, who you were before you came here, in this time, for this time, you chose them because they would apply the pressures you need to rise above the programming in human consciousness. Your family is the mirror that reflects both your light and your shadows. They show you where you're still tethered to old patterns and where you have the opportunities to grow. Not easy to hear, I know. I've had to sit with this myself. In my own life, I didn't just grow up in a family, I was bound by it, even when it looked like I'd escaped. The roles I played, the expectations placed upon me, even the traditions and their nuances, black, female, southern, religious, from New Orleans, adds a whole separate layer. And the family itself and its reputation. They all kept me tied to a version of myself that as I grew was less and less true. For years, I thought breaking free just meant creating my own life. Like, when I move out, everything will be different. Or when I move away, everything will be different. Or getting married. Or maybe for you, it was when you start your own family with your own children. But even then, the programming was ever present, often intensified. So if we've chosen this family as a divine mirror, then what is the lessons? The answer leads us to sovereignty. A return to your own divine authority, the authority you had before human consciousness programming took over. Sovereignty is not about control or power in the way human consciousness often interprets it. It's about operating as your highest, truest self, free of programming and expectations, fully aligned with divine consciousness. I've talked a lot about human consciousness and divine consciousness in previous videos, so just go pick videos for more on it, okay? Here's the bottom line. In sovereignty, you don't have to fight for independence or approval. It's inherent, but you must embody it. And when you do, every choice becomes a declaration of your truth. The last video I posted was a deep dive all about your sovereignty with an accompanying ebook, Your Sovereign Guide. It wasn't until I consciously chose to step out of the never ending downward spiraling cycle that I could release them and stop seeing myself as a victim of my family. See, there are no victims in sovereignty. The two cannot coexist. You are either victim or you are sovereign. I have chosen sovereignty. Family. It's a social construct, and most operate heavily in human consciousness. It's rooted in programming, generational traditions, unspoken rules, and guilt disguised as love. But you, as a sovereign being operating in divine consciousness, change the game. Divine consciousness reminds us that while we are connected, we are not bound. You are not here to carry the weight of traditions, family culture, or their expectations that pull you away from your truth. You are here to rise, to see the mirror for what it is, to heal what needs to be healed, and to step fully into your divine sovereignty. Let's talk about these generational patterns because they are strong. They've been reinforced through repeated behaviors, beliefs, and stories passed down as truths. You know what? This is how we've always done it. You don't abandon family. You owe them this. Family over everything. But here's the truth. Those patterns aren't about love. They're about control. They perpetuate the idea that you must fit into a mold, even if that mold stifles your growth. My family, like yours, had some rules. Many were unspoken, but we all knew what they were. And for years, though many of them probably would not agree because I did buck the system and teetered on the edges, I still followed the script. I did a lot of things because I thought I was supposed to, from within the family and outside of the family because of the programming. Because we can only operate within the confines of the information we have. I've said I do 3 times. In retrospect, they were all human consciousness agreements. Every single decision you make is based on what you believe is best for the human consciousness avatar you've created. And as your avatar changes, so does your views of what's best for it. It's rooted in the identity of your human consciousness avatar, which is inferior to your sovereign being. Even choosing a maiden marriage, yet another human consciousness agreement, rooted in the identity of your human consciousness avatar. Everybody is not ready for this conversation. Are you? Because listen, everybody has created avatars, and we've all been programmed to be as successful as possible within those avatars. We've been taught to align with others whose avatars match the ones we've created. But beneath the surface, it's all empty. And looking back, I can say absolutely none of it was real. It was playing the game for my programming, which is limited. And so is yours. It wasn't real. And it wasn't until I stepped back, I mean, really stepped back from every aspect of life and asked myself what I was truly aligned with, that I saw it for what it was, cycles that were not mine to carry. Have you really made any choices? Or have you simply aligned with what was expected of you through human programming? Here are some truths that people aren't ready for. Every decision made through human consciousness programming are from the options made available to you within that programming. But those options are illusory. They're not truth. Therefore, they're not you. The more you distinguish human consciousness from divine consciousness while leaning into your sovereignty, the clearer all of this will become. Family often equates love with obligation, but true love, love rooted in divine consciousness, doesn't tether, guilt, or demand. It simply allows. And when you begin to recognize that distinction, you start to see the programming for what it is. You see that those roles, those expectations, those traditions, they're not about connection, they're about control. But here's the beautiful part: you don't have to reject your family to break free. You just have to refuse the programming. You can hold love for your family while releasing the patterns that no longer serve you. You can honor where you came from without being bound by it. And when you do that, you don't just free yourself, you create space for your family to break free too. Now, let's get real. During the holidays, or really every single day, I want you to hold on to this truth: you are sovereign. Your family may serve as the mirror, but you are the author of your story. Now, let's get into something that's often misunderstood: what it really means to cut off family. It's a phrase that stirs discomfort, doesn't it? It sounds final, harsh, like taking scissors to a bond meant to last forever. And if you're on the receiving end, whether as a parent, sibling, or a child, it can feel like rejection, like abandonment. But let me reframe this for you. Cutting off isn't about severance, it's about space. It's about recognizing that the dynamics you're tied to don't align with the truth of who you're becoming. And in that realization, stepping back becomes necessary, not from a place of anger or resentment, but from a place of love. Love for yourself, yes. And believe it or not, love for the ones you're stepping away from. Because staying tangled in patterns that keep everyone stuck isn't helping anyone to rise. Here's the thing about stepping back: when your heart is right, it's not about rejection or hatred. It's about liberation. Liberation for yourself. Liberation for them. When we remember that we are all energy, proximity isn't required to hold love for someone. You don't have to stand in their storm to send them warmth. And because we are energy, hear me. Those patterns that feel heavy and misaligned, they'll just keep building momentum if you stay tethered. So choosing your sovereign self, isn't selfish. It's sacred. Oh, I know how hard this can be. Trust me, I do. I made the decision to step back from my family 4 years ago, and it was not easy. There was guilt. Then there was grief, and there was this voice in my head whispering, "How can you do this? These are my people. These are supposed to be my people for life, right?" But here's the truth: I could not rise into my sovereignty while staying tethered to the system that pulled me away from it. The separation wasn't an act of cutting them off forever. It was an act of cutting myself free. Free from the roles and expectations that had been placed on me since birth. And in that space, a space that felt painful and unfathomable at first, I found peace. I found clarity. And most importantly, I found me. Here's something I need you to hear: stepping back doesn't mean you stop loving. It's not about saying you're not worthy of me or I don't care about you. It's about saying I love you enough to let you walk your path, and I love me enough to walk mine. And sometimes it is only in that space, when the emotional pulls and the expectations and the noise are quieted, that you can finally rise into your sovereignty. The dynamics that held you down can't reach you there. And from that place, you can see clearly. You can feel clearly. For some, stepping back may eventually lead to reconnection, but from a higher, healed place. For others, it may not. And that's okay, because sovereignty doesn't require certainty. It only requires truth. So if stepping back feels like the only way forward for you, I want you to hear this. It is not cruel. It is not selfish. It is necessary. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and you cannot give what you do not have. To honor the divinity within you, you may need to release the ties that bind you to the human consciousness in others. And as difficult as that may feel, in doing so, you set both yourself and them free. Free to rise, free to evolve, free to live in the fullness of your sovereignty. Please hear me. Cutting ties is not a decision that anyone should take lightly, and I don't believe it should be your first step. Not everyone needs to sever ties completely. Everyone's path is different, but you have to be honest with yourself. Are your family dynamics helping you to rise, or are they holding you down? Is the connection rooted in love, or is it rooted in control? Here's what I need you to remember. You are sovereign. You don't owe anyone your energy, your time, your peace, not even your family. And while stepping away can be painful, it can also be the most liberating act of love you give to yourself. In the next video, we'll talk about what sovereignty looks like in practice, especially during the holidays. We'll dive into setting boundaries while staying connected, navigating the choice to step back, and how to show up as the most authentic version of yourself. But for now, I want you to reflect on this. If you gave yourself full permission to release what no longer serves you, even if it's family, what would your life look like? And more importantly, what would it feel like? Your sovereignty isn't something you earn, it's something you claim. So claim it. Walk into this season as the divine being you are and watch how everything changes. Here's a reminder to go back and watch the last video on sovereignty, as well as to make sure you get your sovereign guide. Well, that's all I have for you today. It's your life. Choose it just as it is. Own it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Change it as long as you can breathe and learn. Oh, it can get better. From somewhere out here in South America. Ciao for now.